Todd Williams. I come up from down south. Okay, Camas. We talk like that down in Camas. Just outside of Portland, so I am a Washingtonian. I've dealt with most. How many of you guys are in DOR? Anybody from DOR? LNI? You're LNI. Okay, LNI. Okay. ESD. Oh, okay. Well, so the LNI guys get the compliments then. You know, with my business, I have to deal with Washington, Oregon, and Massachusetts. Okay, and pay taxes, and I'm the tax collector for all 3 of those states. Washington is the easiest. You guys have really done a good job with your systems. End of story. Okay. No, it's not brown nosing. It's one of those things. Man, it's so much easier to do Washington than it is any other state. Anyway, cool. So what we're going to be talking about here is strategy, strategic alignment, and project management. How many of you are project managers? How many are upper level managers that actually put together strategy? Anybody? Okay. Oh. Over here. He says over here. Okay. There's people behind you pointing at you. Okay. A lot of people at the project management level don't really kind of comprehend what that whole strategy piece means. They kind of get their project, they run their project, and they don't think about strategy of the company and the corporation. And I think that's completely wrong. I think most projects that actually fail don't have a good strategic alignment, and that's one of the major reasons, and I mean 80–90% of the reason why projects actually fail. And I've been into more than one. I am going to do a couple of case studies here. There are these case studies because, you know, whenever I come in to fix a project for you guys, you probably don't want me reporting on it up here. So a little bit of disclaimer up front. They are either out of NDA, they're more than 7 years old, they are given with permission, or both. Actually, there's one that's both. They are in the public domain. So I have one at the very end. It's a public domain. That's a government project that I didn't get paid for. I did some reporting on it for the Oregonian, and so I know a lot about it. Little project. I'm not sure you've heard of it. Cover Oregon. Has anybody heard of Cover Oregon? Okay. Peter, you've heard of Cover Oregon, right? You're one of the taxpayers that's chunking out the $250 million to get it taken care of. And so that's all public domain stuff that I've got there. So when you see me putting stuff up here, it's not that I'm divulging any secrets or anything like that. Let's get moving. Title of this is Vision to Value. What does that mean to you? Give me a couple of ideas. When I say vision to value, and I got that as a presentation in their pack somewhere, or magazines, you should see a magazine called Vision to Value lying around. What does that mean to you?
Enterprise to project.
Enterprise?
To project.
To project.
From an idea into something that actually you can implement.
Just implement?
Well, something that actually works. It's useful.
It's useful,
yeah.
Right? Because I mean, a lot of things work and aren't useful. I mean, all the jokes that just came to mind there, and I thought, no, these guys don't know me well enough. I can't say that yet. My kids, they sometimes, well, they don't work. No, never mind.
Mine either.
Yeah, so that doesn't work. Okay, there's many things out there that work that aren't useful. I think so. Yeah, so it has to be useful. There's some value to it. So you're taking some concept and moving it off to something that has some value. Okay, I think many of you probably have been on a project that has delivered and the customer has said, I don't like it. And you go, but it met the scope, schedule, and budget. I did all that right. Right. And that's the fault or the failure of PMI's view of the triple constraint, scope, schedule, and budget. You can deliver to that and you can actually not achieve what you want to achieve. And you have somebody who doesn't use the system. It's got to have value to make it happen. Let's underscore that with a case study. Obviously, it's a totally public domain. A case study on a thing called the Hubble Space Telescope. How many of you know about the Hubble Space Telescope? It's also an easy one because everybody knows what it is. Okay, concept came out. And they got approval to do it in 1971. They were funded with about $200 million to do it, which is about half of what they really wanted. Everybody wants more. The funding came out in 77. They were supposed to actually launch the space telescope in 83, and it finally got through final assembly in 85. And I really wish I knew the cost of it to get to that point. I haven't been able to dig that number up, so I'd love to know what it is, but I know it's not $200 million. Okay, not there yet. Finally got launched in 1990. Now, it was supposed to go off in 1983 or 1990, that's 7 years later. About 3 years of that delay was because of the Challenger incident. Okay, so they couldn't, can't blame them, but that still makes them about 4 years late. Okay, most of us can do the burn rate in our heads and realize that was probably just $200 million right there. Nothing more than that. And everyone, great hoopla, great excitement. This thing's up there, get it out of the bay, set it up there for 24 hours, let it stabilize so we can get these absolutely fantastic pictures. There's only one problem with the pictures. They didn't look like that. They looked like this. They were fuzzy. It's a spherical aberration in the lens, which means, in layman's terms, it's supposed to be a parabolic reflector, and they ground the mirror wrong. Okay? So all of the money and the technology to get this really cool telescope put together, get all the communications set up, get everything on the ground ready to receive these pictures, get it in a shuttle, make sure it doesn't get damaged on the flight, because my feeling is probably the takeoff of a shuttle is not like, accelerating your Lexus down the road here. It's probably a little more rugged than that. So it probably had to be a lot of cushioning. So all the technology to get this thing up into space all worked perfectly, just someone forgot Astronomy 101. And I really do mean that, because you can go out and you can actually grind a mirror yourself by getting 2 pieces of glass and following the instructions correctly and just moving the glass around. You end up with a parabolic reflector. It's really quite easy to do. Okay? Home project type thing. They missed. Okay? Well, a little late, a little over budget, and didn't quite hit the scope the way they were supposed to hit the scope, right? So they missed all that. 3 years later, right? I think every one of us has seen some of these pictures, right? They're really cool. So some of these things look like watercolors, not like real things. Yeah, some of it's X-ray that's been shifted over to visual light so you can see it, but some really cool stuff. And everyone just got totally wrapped into this. And people wanted the Hubble to look at this and look at that, and they have this massive scheduling program just to schedule when the Hubble's going to look where. Okay, it's a huge effort that they have to do. Okay. Then there was another shuttle disaster. Another shuttle disaster on re-entry made it so that people said, wow, had we known this, had we known that there was damage to the wing, we could have taken the shuttle and we could have put it into the space station, and at least people could have had safe harbor in the space station. So a new rule, we are going to have all shuttle flights go to the space station and be on a path to be able to go past the space station. One problem, the Hubble was on a different orbit. And you could not go to the Hubble and then, like, it's not like driving a car. You can't just kind of like turn left and go around the corner and get to the space station. You had to be on that primary orbit, right? You couldn't get there, right? So they decided they were going to kill, or I shouldn't say that, wrong word, wrong term. They were going to scrub the maintenance missions and deorbit the Hubble. Thousands, tens of thousands of ordinary citizens like you and me complained and said, no way, this is too good. You can't do that. You can't get rid of that. And they complained to their congressman. They said, no way, make it change. And so what happened was in 2004, they finally said, okay, we're going to risk human life to keep the Hubble going. And some of you may remember that shuttle mission when it took off, because they had some beautiful pictures of the shuttle sitting there ready to take off. In the background was a second shuttle. And that was their backup for actually what happened, for not having the space station in line, is there would be 2 shuttles. And it's the only time in history that 2 shuttles, in fact 2 manned rockets, have been sitting like that ready to take off at the same time. That's not true, because it happened in Gemini 2. But the first time the 2 shuttles were on the launch pad at the same time. Okay, so really cool pictures that came from that. So they went up and they saved the Hubble telescope. Let's roll back the tape just a little bit. It was 10 years late, hundreds of millions of dollars over budget, and the basics of Astronomy 101 weren't met. It failed every single one of the triple constraints, but was considered to be a big enough success and of enough value to risk human life. This project wasn't a failure by anybody's imagination. They thought it was great. It was wonderful. It's the antithesis of the one I said earlier, which is you hit scope, schedule, and budget, and nobody likes it. Right? So it works, but nobody likes it. So there's got to be something different here. And what is the difference? What is that key thing that makes this a success?
Value.
Value, right? And if it isn't, if there wasn't value to it, then you wouldn't be able to justify it as a success. So what is the value of the Hubble Space Telescope to the tens of thousands of ordinary citizens like you and me?
Really nice wallpapers for your computer.
Really nice wallpaper for your computer. Probably an expensive way to get it, but you're right. A lot of people really like it. What else?
Knowledge.
Knowledge. So I think there's something actually that's bigger than that.
Primordial beginnings of everything.
That's primordial beginnings, how things started out, depending on what your religious traditional beliefs are.
No, probably lessons learned.
Lessons learned.
Yeah.
I think there's another big one out there. Hope.
Right, exactly. A dream.
Hope. A dream. When you look at these pictures, it's Star Trek, right? Going to new frontiers, going beyond. It's like there's something else out there. There's something else to explore. There's no threat here. People look at this stuff as hope. Okay? Now, how many of you in your spreadsheets have a column for hope? Value.
It's understood.
No, hope, that's risk and hope don't go together. That's prayer. That is prayer, straight out. Yeah. That's why you have the project dice, right? That's the risk. That's what I do.
Contingency. That's what I do.
Yeah. So these things are not measurable. And so what you're really trying to do is deliver a project by monitoring scope, schedule, and budget, and hoping like heck that you actually hit the value, right? And it's your job as a project manager to actually monitor that value and hit it, okay? No small feat, okay? A little hard to go and put an equation around it. So how do you do that? Well, the first is you have to have a vision. Not just you have to have a vision for your project, but your organization has to have a vision. Vision statements are not just something to hang on the wall that you look at, you know, as you walk into the office every day. There really is a meaning behind that. What is it that we're trying to do, and what are we trying to achieve? And for me, that is really, really critical. Vision, Mark Twain's quote here, I truly do love that one. A person with a new idea is a crank until he succeeds. You know, then all of a sudden they're not so stupid anymore. Okay, kind of cool. Okay. Once you have that vision, you have to put together a strategy and goals to around that strategy to understand where it is you're going and make it work. And it has to be written. Now, written doesn't mean concrete. I didn't say golden tablets and carve it in. I said write it down, because your strategy is going to change to get to any vision, because you don't know. You don't have 20/20 foresight. You can't make it, that's how I'm going to get there, and that's going to be it. You're going to change the path. It's going to be something that you're going to refer back to. You may change it. You may modify it. But if you don't have it written, you don't know how you've modified it, how you've changed it, and you can't communicate it. Or at least you can't communicate it very effectively. After you have a strategy, then you need to have the right people. And if you don't have the right people, you're going nowhere. Yeah, so that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Okay? Now, there's people who disagree with this. So how many of you have read From Good to Great? Okay? What does he say?
The bus.
They say people first. They say people before strategy. He's really emphatic about that. And I think that that's probably true if you are a startup. And even though Good to Great was in, big companies, they were all of a sudden sitting down and saying, okay, we have a company, and now we want to go do something spectacular. I want to go through this turning point. What can I do? Well, who do I have? And based on who I have and the assets I have, this is where I can go. Slightly different than what I'm talking about here. We have a strategy. We have someplace we want to go. And now how do we get there? Well, we better get the right people to get there. So we're saying the same thing. He flips it. I keep it this way because it's a different mindset. We're normally, what we're trying to do, we try to meet a strategy, so we have to have the people to match that.
I think in the private sector that might be entirely possible. In the public sector, I think we are constrained quite a bit.
You have one or two little shackles on your legs, yeah.
Especially where people are.
Yes. The problems don't go away in the private sector. You have the same problem. Maybe it's an order of magnitude higher in the public sector for unions and other seniority rules and stuff like that. But in the private sector, you have just as much politics and just as much, well, you know, I kind of like Bubba.
Much of the time, you're getting on board a project that's already on the move, rather than. You know.
Just because this is something that I have a real challenge with, and that is just because of the fact that you're getting a project that is running. Why does that mean that you can't say that Barb isn't the perfect fit, and I really need to have somebody else instead of Barb? Right? You have to be able to say that. Okay? I was the one up in front this morning who said, you know, fire the bastards and start over again. You know? And I think the guy down to my left said, nah, you know, work with them, cuddle them. You know, I do have a little bit of cuddly, touchy-feely kind of part of me, but the other part of me says, get the project done. Okay? And so, yeah. Changing people out, I think you have to do that. And even if you come onto a project, and especially if it's in trouble, you need to assess what the people are. You have to, okay? And that doesn't mean fire somebody. Just let's find another job for them. Most people that I deal with, and one part I do agree with, is that people do want to do the right thing, okay? And so whenever you have somebody who's not great in your project, go find them some other place to work where they're going to be happy. I have no problem with that. That I think would work. That's positive for both sides. Okay, but take it. It is not. This is by a long shot the hardest part of this entire process, by a long shot. Okay. Does that help out? Okay. After that, we go to process. How many of you are PMPs? Okay. Your PMP is based on process, right? That's all it is. Because you can't. No, my negative view on PMI, I have my PMP, but you know, I've got my cynical view on PMI. You can't make money off of testing people on soft skills. You can on process, so that's what they focus on. And they need to focus more on soft skills and get out of the process. But we're attacking down here, and we've been trained to attack down here. We need to be attacking up higher than that. But this is where the PMI level is at. And then after that, technology. I cannot throw technology at a problem and make it any better. I can take technology and I can throw it at a good set of people and a good set of processes, and I can make it a lot more efficient. But if I have bad people and bad processes and I throw technology at it, the best I'm going to do is to get in trouble much faster and very efficiently. Okay? Nothing better than that. Okay? So strategy, people, process, and then technology. And you have to work the stack in that order. And any of you that are project managers and you come in at this level and all of a sudden you get a project, you need to back up and make sure that you really are aligned with the strategy. Every single project I have ever worked on has huge portions of it that are not aligned to the strategy. I'm going to talk about one that I actually worked at your company, okay, in a little bit, very quickly. And over 70% of that project was not aligned with strategy. Okay? That's how bad it was. And I have permission to say that.
It's recorded.
Yes, it is, actually. It's in the back. Okay? So let's take an example. How can you get something that wanders that far off? How can I be working on a project and keep working on that project and all of a sudden it's not aligned with strategy at all? I mean, what's the company doing? Well, I'm going to give you probably the most drastic out in left field example, because nobody can argue with it, of here is an example of how far things can go off. This is in the aughts, so the early 2000s, okay? There were 3 major companies that built software for the semiconductor industry. Now, the semiconductor industry has these huge multi-billion-dollar plants like Intel, and they have pieces of equipment that if they're down and not running or not processing equipment for like 10 minutes, they cost $1 million, right? So you want these things running all the time. You want stuff coming in the front end of them every single second of every single day, okay? And what they did is they had a set of manufacturing execution systems that would drive them. There were 3 in the industry, Promise out of Toronto, Factory Works out of Boston, and Consilium Fab 300 out of California. Okay? Promise was used in almost every single Asian fab. Consilium was used in every Intel fab. Okay? Factory Works was newer and hitting some of the newer upstart fabs. Okay? Promise Systems Corporation out of Toronto saw that their software was okay, it was doing good, but they got tired of people like myself in the system integration world actually deploying it out in fabs and making it integrate to the equipment, and we would make 30% margins, and they were making like 12% margins. So they decided they were going to get in the system integration world. They were going to go make money. So they decided to sell their system and services to Tower Semiconductor in Israel. Has anybody ever worked in Israel? It's an interesting place to work. Have a conversation about that afterwards. Okay? They started realizing that system integration was a little harder than they thought, and they started getting into some financial trouble. When that happened, another company out there called PRI bought Promise. And they did it because PRI had all the material handling equipment that would actually move wafers around inside the facility. And if they had the software that controlled where things are supposed to be, they'd be like in control of the fab, right? There'd be the cat's pajamas, and they'd just do great, okay? And then they found out how much work that was. And they got into financial trouble. This is also just as the dot-com bubble really did implode, okay? Shortly before 9/11, okay? So it was about July of 9/11, okay? And another company came in by the name of Brooks Automation and bought PRI, okay? This is what we call big fish, little fish problem, right? And they keep buying one another. One small problem. Brooks owned Factory Works, okay? So now the company who owned one of the competitive manufacturing execution systems just bought the company who had inadvertently bought another company that had the third one, the Promise, okay, Promise Systems, okay? They bought PRI not for the software, they bought PRI for the material handling system. So now all the projects that were on Promise, all the Asian facilities that were on Promise were not on Brooks's roadmap to support, because they weren't supporting Promise, they were supporting Factory Works. So all of those projects, all those installations became orphaned. That went on for about 2 years, about 2 years. And then I got a call saying, hey, can you come out and take a look at this thing, because this project is it's just in horrible shape. And I was on site for about 6 weeks, and I said, well, hello guys, are you even paying attention? You're not even looking at this, you're not supporting it, you're not giving it the resources it needs, you're not giving it the mind share it needs, it still needs executive and management control. So you have two choices. One, we can finish it the way it is, it'll cost you about $3 million. You only have, it was an $8 million project, and they were at $7.5 million of burn. It was going to cost them about $3 million to finish it, do the math, $2.5 million in debt. Or you can switch them to Factory Works, which would cost you another $6 million. Which would you like to do? So the company changed its strategy and said, I think we'll support Promise. I had a little conversation about all the fabs in Asia that were running Promise, and they weren't going to be able to convert them either, right? So here was a project that was going along just fine, and through acquisition, they ended up just being completely off-center. And no one worked back to either bring the project back online or bring the company back to focus on Promise. It took an outside person like myself to go and kind of jump the company around, okay? So these things happen, and it's like, how can they really happen that way? But they do. And this is the best example I could have. So what we need to do, if we're going to go, we have the concept of the strategy, the people, the process, and the technology, and we know where we're going to go. How do we then take a group or a department or the organization and actually drive them to work on the correct projects and stay focused? The way we do that, and I'm going to use one example, you could use somebody else's, and you've got this piece of paper, okay? On the back is an activity diagram, which we're not going to cover. I didn't realize I had page 2 on there. This activity diagram, so if you want to take notes on that while we go through this, you can. the very first thing you have to focus on is the financial goals of whatever your organization or company or division inside of the organization or company is working on. So this could be DSHS, it could be Boeing, it could be just spar manufacturing in Boeing, right? It could be whatever it wants to be, whatever it needs to be. And you look at those financial goals, and so here's an example. This is an actual example. What I've handed you is slightly sanitized, has a couple of names taken off of it. What's on the screen is the exact copy of what we use for a company in Chicago, again with permission, okay? And you focus on what the financial goals are. This is a startup, so the very top one is to increase the investment returns, because the investor wanted to have some money come back out of this thing for some strange reason. I don't quite understand that one, okay? Now, I get a lot of pushback on this because people say, wait a minute, you should be focusing on the customer. And you're right, you need to focus on the customer, and we will in a second. But if you focus on the customer and you don't meet your financial goals, you won't be focusing on customers for very long. Right? Because if you don't make a profit, you aren't going to go anywhere. So you do actually have to drive down to focusing on the actual financials. Then you look at what the customer wants. And if you can't get these two layers aligned so that these things that the customer wants to do, and it shouldn't be 50 things, that should be 3 or 4 or maybe 5 at the most, okay? And if you can't make these align to your financial goals, you need to go back to the starting point and start over again, because you don't have a business model that's going to work to begin with. Okay? Now, for many of you, your customer is the citizenry, and your financial goals may not be to make a profit, but you still have to have some sort of inflow and outflow, and you have to have some sort of balance. You have to know where things are going, and even if it's deficit or if it's a profit, you have to understand how that works. Now, I had somebody in the last session say, but I don't see how this is going to work in a government situation. And I pointed him to the book Strategy Maps by Norton and Kaplan. Those are the two people who actually developed and defined the balanced scorecard. And in the book Strategy Maps, I believe it's that book. If not, if you don't find it in that book, give me a holler, because I'll find the book that's on my shelf. Okay. And the case study that they have in there they have a couple of municipal, but there is one state government that they actually do use as a case study. And the governor who was in charge of that state, his last name was Locke. Okay, I don't know if you're familiar with the guy. Okay, so they actually use Washington State's implementation of balanced scorecard and strategy maps as their example. Okay, so I know that this type of stuff has actually been used in Washington at the governmental level. Okay, so I'm using, I could have actually taken that case study and thrown that up here, but I could have gone down into it about that much in depth. With my own, I can, you can ask me questions until the cows come home and I can answer the questions. So, but I do know that it works both directions. Okay? Once you have this, you have the foundation of what you have to do, what my customers want and what my financial goals are. And once you've got that balanced, now you can look at what you have to do to support that. So internally, you then have a set of things that you need to do. And that's a lot of things, right? We're not going to start those all tomorrow. So in this case, reduce my costs. Well, by reducing costs, I could do that through patient marketing. I could do that through a better EMR. I could do that through various group purchasing options. So these in this area tend to relate to items here. And then this is the timeline. You'll see in just a second. And once I understand what it is I need to do to support those two sets of things up here, now I can take a look at what I have to do to learn and grow. What do I have to literally know? What do I have to learn? Do I have to go for training? Do I have to hire people? What knowledge do I have to bring in? Is it going to be full-time or temporary? Can I do this by contracting? Do I have to have this as a retained person internally? And then how do I grow otherwise? Maybe I need new offices. Maybe I need to buy another company to get capabilities and grow that way. And I get their facilities, I get their market, I get their region, right? So by doing this at either company or even an organizational level, then you have an actual plan of which initiatives you're going to do and how they're actually going to support that overall goal. And as a project manager on a project, you should make sure that anything that you're doing points back to one of these bubbles. Because if it doesn't, then you're not meeting the overall goals. You don't do it all at one time. In this case, again, private company, startup, their very first section they did was they worked here. What is our value dominance? They were building a new electronic medical record system, a new EMR, for integrative medicine physicians, a niche of physicians. And the very first thing they had to show was they provided value to the physician. That was more important than revenue. Because if I don't provide value to you, I'll never get you to pay for it. Okay? So that was their first step, and we focused on this. Then they went to the sustaining revenue model. Is how do I now take that? I've got the value established. Now how do I start monetizing this and getting more money from it? And then whenever I get to the point of, okay, now I've got a working monetization model, let's now go out for national prominence. And instead, break away from the regional and doing things in 4 or 5 different cities and now just hit the country as a whole. And these were the initiatives that had to happen to make that happen. Obviously, that is not something that gets done all at once. You work from these kind of this lower level on out. In general, you only have 3 initiatives running at a time. I have that argument with companies, one right after the other. Oh God, we have 27 initiatives. That's 24 too many, maybe 23 too many, but you got to cut it down because there's not enough mind share at the executive level to be able to go get that done and understand how to make it work. And the people down at the lower level who are supporting it are being multiplexed back and forth between so many different projects on so many different things that they totally lose context, and task switching and lack of context, they lose hundreds and hundreds of hours. Okay? So you really need to work very small pieces of this at one time. Work small pieces, they also go faster. They don't have to be reworked, so you save time. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why that happens. And I go blue in the face with some companies getting that point across. Okay? So as I mentioned, if you take a look at this from something like an IT standpoint, instead of a company, then what you're looking at in this area is basic operations. If you're trying to put together a balance score or a strategy map for an IT organization, basic operations. Is email up? You know, can I get to the systems all the time? You know, power goes out, they're still running. That's basic operational stuff. And unless you get basic operational stuff, you can't do anything else till you get out here. Move over to that next step. Can I actually execute a project and get it done, get it completed, and have some value to it? And once I get those 2 things done, then I become a strategic partner, or can become a strategic partner in helping other organizations actually plot strategy. And until I get to that point, if you're in an IT group, how many are in IT? Okay, so if you're in IT, you're always going to be on the tail of the dog until you can get these 2 things going. If you can't get these 2 things going, you'll never be part of strategy, period. Never happen. Why would you have somebody come into a strategic planning meeting when they can't keep email going? You know, they've missed the boat. Okay? So when you combine those 2 things, so I have strategy, people, process, technology. I now have a strategy map that tells me what things I have to do in what order. That kind of brings this whole thing to life. It makes it stand up on its own. And you can see how it works. You can see how you're going to implement it. So we start at the theoretical and then getting down to, you know, more into the implementation core of what actually has to happen. Too many project managers don't understand that that's how this works, and if they don't understand how it works, then how are they going to keep their project guided in the direction they need to go? Okay? One of the nice things about this is it is one piece. Have any of you seen the other Todd's presentation on condensing everything down to one page? He did it this morning. I think he does it again this afternoon. And that is what this is. It gives anybody in the company one piece of paper where they can look at it and say, I'm doing this right here, I'm doing this right here, to the point in which it tells a story. So what's different on this slide than the other ones is the story that goes right up this left-hand column. Build a world-class team to create a set of services and products for integrative medicine physicians to establish a strong and stable revenue stream. That's the mission of this company. Or if this is an IT type thing or it was an HR type strategy map, it would tell what HR or IT had to do going right up the side. And this comes last. You put all of this together of what you're trying to do, and then you tell the story of what it says, and it's all there. This is something that can sit literally, I've seen it sitting in people's cubicles. You can walk up to them and say, what am I working on? Oh, I'm working on a subset of this right here. It's one of the projects inside there. We're doing this and this and this and this is what, and that relates to this and this. And everybody knows it all the way down to the programmer, business analyst. All of those people know it. Like you caught me in the morning whenever I said, how do you make teams? You bring them into this whole thing. They help build this. So this is not done in an ivory tower, not even close to it. Okay? And it really works. This company, by the way, funded initially with $5 million, got another $5 million as we rolled off of it, because that was our job, was to stand it up. The people who came into it, they have now like a truly world-class board of people who have run $100 million companies, $100 million startups. So we were able to get this, they still use this. It was that infrastructure that we set up for them. So this is not, I'm not just throwing this up here as because it's pretty, because I actually do think it's pretty, but not because it's pretty, because it really did work. Okay, so now we're into one of those little bubbles. I'm into this bubble. What do I have to do that's so important on that bubble? What is that bubble doing? The answer's on the y-axis. It's providing a capability. Every project, every initiative that you guys deal with provides capability. And if it doesn't provide a capability, then why are you doing the project? And what we do is we have a set of people who work on building that capability, and then we have a set of people who run that capability. How many of you guys have people who are running capabilities out here, they're running something, and then you bring them onto your project to go build the next thing? How many do that? Okay. Does it work very well for you? Nope.
Yeah,
Depends?
Well, 'cause
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that, and I could be wrong, but it sounds to me like you're talking about who maintain it, right? So I work in IT and I was a software developer, so I'm thinking the maintenance developers. And then all the time we pull maintenance developers in to work on new projects. For one, it depends, because they're the ones that have the business knowledge of the systems. So sometimes it does work to our benefit to pull them in.
But the people who are actually running that system in the business,
Okay, I'm talking.
right? And if you're talking just in IT, slightly different. Not a lot different, but slightly different. And we'll talk about in a second here. Because what's the characteristics of a person who does this, that does development?
Creativity.
Creativity. What else? How do they handle risk?
Risk takers.
They're risk takers, right? Do they like change or do they abhor change?
Like change.
They like change, okay? What about these guys over here? Do they like risk? No, that's a four-letter word, right? Truly is. How about change? Do they like change? That's like about 5 four-letter words. I mean, it's really bad. You get a whole string. You're going to change it. Ooh, no, I'm not. Blank, 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 right? These people generally have a very different attitude than these people. These people like change, they like to move fast, they like to be innovative. These guys like process, they like control, they like low risk. I have a phrase that I said one time, and there was a person, do you guys know what IIBA is? The Institute of International Business Analysts or something like that, right? Is it IIBA or RBAA, IBBA, something like that, okay? And I said, process stifles creativity. And these people are all about process, right? I mean, 100% process. And I thought this lady was going to literally rip my throat out. I mean, the whole room, because everybody knew both of us, and the whole room just went, oh boy, here comes the fight. The gloves are off. But it is. Process does stifle creativity. That's the whole point. It keeps something so it's consistent from time to time to time to time. Okay? Process around accounting is great. Creative accounting got us where? Yeah, exactly. Did you have a question? Oh, I thought I saw you raise your hand. Okay, sorry. Okay, so we really need to have teams that have a significantly different outlook on life to run these two sections. There's one other problem with these people over here. They have day jobs, right? Imagine this as being a blank piece of paper, and that representing their 8-hour day or their 40-hour week or whatever it is. And then you're going to get a project. And you say, oh, and you're going to come help me on my project. And they're looking at their 40-hour week and saying, okay, I'll give you that much of your time, my time, and that's what you get to run your project. Because I got other stuff to do, okay? That's all they're going to give you. They don't have the time. They got other stuff they need to be doing. Last time I looked, most organizations, whether government or private, don't have people just sitting around waiting for something to do, right? It just doesn't happen. So our job is to get the right people in both of these locations, get information coming across. It doesn't mean we're going to have to staff up. We have to have special people here that can work with those people there. And then our job is to go and make that as short as possible. I want this time to market, the time to get my project out and running and doing something beneficial, be it profitability or be it value or usability, okay? That needs to be short. That means I'm probably not going to run a monolithic project. That doesn't mean I go to Agile, but it may mean I phase it. I may do one city at a time. I may do one-tenth of the functionality now and another tenth later and another 30% some other time, but I roll it out as quickly as I can so I can get to this green area where I'm getting some productivity out of this thing. Okay? And that's what our job is then to make sure that we do this. That requires the right people. That requires the right process. It requires the right strategy. Okay? Does that make sense? Questions, comments? Okay, so now how do I do that from a deep down level? How do I know that my organization can do it? What do I have to do with my organization to see that? I break it down into 3 different areas. One is the executive area, so I call it the executive scope. In a minute, I'm going to have governance scope, and then we have project scope on here. Okay? And if you're going to try to make this happen and make this efficient, you're going to be wanting to look at, do my projects actually align to strategy? Is that really the case? Is there pad in my project? How many of you guys have had projects that maybe had a few extra pet projects thrown on it? You know, kind of like bills going through Congress, right? And they get the writers that go on top of it. You know, we get a bills going. Well, do bills go through Congress? I'm not sure if they do anymore. But long ago, bills used to go through Congress, and whenever they did that, it's a federal level thing, right? Then they would throw through a bill on trees, and they'd end up with something in there about salamanders in the desert or something. Pork, yeah, okay? So you have to make sure that it's aligned and that every component's aligned, just not the project itself, because that's too high a level. If you want to drill down further, then you have to say, what's my staff doing? Do I have the correct staff to do what I need to do? Not as harsh as what I said yesterday, or this morning, whenever I said, fire them and get new people, but you do have to reallocate the resources. I really do use that word, because I am, in most cases, just moving people around the organization and trying to get the right set of people, the right butts in the right seat, so to speak. What do I have for processes? The number of companies I go into that have one process, like a waterfall process, or even an agile process for everything, and we're going to fit everything into that, it doesn't work. Processes are tools in a toolkit, and I've got my agile section and maybe my critical change section and my waterfall section, and whenever I reach in, if I'm looking at a screw, I grab a screwdriver, not a hammer. I'm going to use the right tool for what I'm trying to do, okay? And at the very, very end, we start looking at technology. But if you don't have that, if you don't go down in that order and do those assessments in that order, you're going to be challenged. For an IT assessment, I try to figure out what, I do apologize, most of the work that I do is in the private sector, okay, so there's a lot of private sector stuff, and so I dug up an IT assessment because I thought that would be the most translated. If you want a full case study, I've got a case study here. I didn't put one for everybody because I didn't think it would be that exciting, but you might want one, so come and get one if you want one. What do? You want to take a look at what, I shouldn't say what we do, what should you be doing, I'm sorry. What are the strengths, skills, capability, and gaps of the current organization? If it's HR, take IT out of there and put HR. It works the same question works, okay? This is just happens to be, I wanted to give you an exact example out of that case study, okay? And then here, what's the true and total cost of IT, including shadow IT. Shadow IT, I know that would never happen. I'm sure your IT groups are totally on top of it, and you would not have a small group of people inside your own group outside of IT that's like developing access databases and maintaining printers and doing little sub-networks and stuff like that. That's what we call shadow IT because IT can't support you, okay? And what does that really mean? Because that is technical debt building like there's no tomorrow. Do you guys know what technical debt is? From a software standpoint, most people know what it means. I use the word not just in software, but also overall. That means I'm putting Band-Aids on top of something to get it to work, and that's debt. You got to fix it sometime, and you're building up that debt. Okay? You drill down further. I'll let you read this so we don't run out of time. Drill down further into what the organization's doing, what's their long-term strategies, et cetera. Okay? At the next level, you're going to look at capabilities assessment. Now, how many of you know what a PMO is? You guys should know. This is a loaded question. What does the P stand for?
Project?
It depends on what you want it to stand for.
I like this guy. Yeah. Is it project? Is it program?
Yeah.
Is it portfolio?
Yeah.
Right? So my point is, I don't like using the word PMO or the phrase PMO because nobody really knows what it means, right? And even whenever you get a whole bunch of people together and they start talking about project management portfolio, if that's what they're talking about, well, does that mean you give the methodology, or does it mean you hand over the people? What does that really mean? And everybody's got their own definition, right? So I call this the governance level, okay? And the governance level has to make sure that you have the right capabilities. That's beyond just do I have the right people, how does all this stuff fit together? And am I capable of running that type of project? Do I have the maturity in this organization? Okay. I've had executives come to me and say, that's a great idea, Todd, but our company is not mature enough to do that. We have to scale this back down. And so we'd actually have to rescale back down to the maturity of the organization. Very valid concern. And invaluable to do, because if you try to do something that's very mature with an immature organization, you're not going to make it. Project health checks. This is also known as, somebody in here, I use the A word, okay? Also known as audits, right? It's looking at the project periodically from an outside source to make sure the project is achieving what it's supposed to achieve. Now, there are two people who won those little gift bags for me. And in there was this whole watermelon. I actually walked up to both of them. I said, you got a whole watermelon for a reason. I said, those are represent watermelon projects. Ones that are green on the outside and red on the inside. Right? Everybody thinks they're really, really doing good until they look inside. They go, ugh. Okay? Project health checks tend to take those away. They will definitely identify them if someone's listening. And I'll show you a project health check not done by us, done by somebody else in just a little bit when we talk about Cover Oregon. Okay? So I put on a project back in 2006, show you how an audit works. And whenever I ran the audit on that project, it took me about 4 weeks, I think, 4 weeks. This is what I found in the project. It had scope creep, maintenance was included in the project, the end user wasn't defined, project sponsor wasn't defined, the executive management wasn't monitoring the project maintenance group was missing. No delegation of authority. They were trying to do too much with they didn't have the skill set they needed, and there was no decision-making capability. Okay, other than that, the project was running well. Everyone laughs. There's only one thing in here that's a project problem. Okay? What?
Decision making.
Nope. You're getting close. So so scope creep is a decision-making problem. Decision-making problem is what kind of problem? It's a sponsor problem. You can't get a sponsor until you get
Project check.
until you know who the end user is, wherever that's at. Okay? This project didn't have, it wasn't that it didn't have any end user, it had two. Okay? And the two were so far apart that the project was spending all of its time trying to figure out what it was really trying to build. And whenever I turned around, went back to the source documents, and I said, this is going to be group X, it's going to be the marketing group, and they're going to run it because that's what this was originally established to do, the project sailed. Just a second. It was, when I came in, they were saying it was going to be about 14 months late. It was a 9-month project. It was going to be 14 months late. We were almost 7, okay? And they demonstrated product 6 weeks later. That's how well, when I say the project was running well, the team was there, I mean, it was a beautiful team. The minute you said, that's the point I want you to go to, they were off and made it happen. Yes, sir.
Yes, so when you say the root cause is what the end user not defined, so isn't that taken care of when you're talking about the strategic vision and strategic alignment and all that?
Yes, in fact, in this, when you went back to the original documents, that's actually what happened, okay? But someone else, a vice president in the company, had inserted herself into this project to go and try to steer the project toward them. And I took that up.
We're out of alignment.
Yep, the project went this way, pulled by executive management. Okay, that's the other part in here. The end user wasn't defined. That's what stopped the project. That was the physical thing that stopped the project. The source of it, executives. Everything else in here is executives also. Okay, lack of executive involvement was another one. Or maybe it was inappropriate executive involvement because we did have one executive who was steering this thing totally the other direction, but no other executive saw it. Nobody was watching it enough to say, hey, what's really going on here? Okay? And the third one was there was no product maintenance group. Maintenance is not a project. Projects have distinct beginning and end. Maintenance has a beginning. It has no end. It goes on forever, right? So they were throwing maintenance work into the project, which kept bloating scope. Okay, so the minute we got a product maintenance group done, then they moved over to the side. So when you're talking, when you said something about the, we use IT people and we use them on both sides of the fence, yes, you do, but the product maintenance group has a very specific function that has to happen first, and that's to keep bugs down and maybe even little minor enhancements and that sort of thing. Okay, but that's what was just crippling this project. Okay, now at the lowest level you have the project management scope. Okay, SOW generation. What's my statement of work for this project itself, not what the subcontractors are doing? Project kickoff. How many of you guys do project kickoffs? Okay. Are these warm, fuzzy things where you all get together and go, rah, 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 the project is going to happen? Or what do you do in those?
Educate.
Educate on what?
On the charter.
Okay. Do you build the charter or do you educate on the charter?
Well, the charter is already built.
Okay. So a good project kickoff, you may start with a draft charter.
I was going to say mine wasn't built.
Yeah. The kickoff should do that, okay? The kickoff should do project charter, should have roles and responsibilities, escalation path, escalation responsibilities, and risks. Everybody from vendors to end users. So I mean, a state, you can't have everybody from the state come in, so you get your key representatives of the end user the end using stakeholders, get them into the meeting so that they're representing what has to go on, and everyone hears the same story, and you make sure that everyone knows these are my roles, these are my responsibilities, she's doing that, he's doing that, and whenever I get mad at both of you or you two can't get along, then I go back and I give it to Ray and say, hey Ray, fix it, right? Because that's my escalation path. And if you don't do that, you're going to be doing that out here somewhere going down the road. Okay? Lastly is a retrospective. One of the best things you can do, one of the worst executed processes I've ever seen. I don't think I've ever really seen a retrospective go well. They tend to be, pardon the expression, but bitch sessions where people sit around and say, yeah, 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 and no one ever takes the output from the retrospective and puts it back into the process. Very, very rare. Okay? And those are what you have to do at the project level. So let's take an example. I'm running a little bit late. I apologize. We'll go through this somewhat fast. I'll use an example. Cover Oregon. Now, Cover Oregon, I do project recovery. I do a lot of project audits. So what happened is the Oregonian was looking around for somebody to actually help them write articles on Cover Oregon. So they found me. They said, hey, will you do this? We negotiate out that I wasn't going to get paid for it. So, it was a horrible negotiation on my part. Okay, but I did get my name in the paper a few times. Okay, so I did actually get quoted, so it's good press. Okay, that's what they tell me. I have no idea. Okay, and so I got all the documents from Cover Oregon, and then every time the Oregonian, not every time, many times when the Oregonian actually goes out to make some statement, they give me a call and say, hey, is this right? Can we say this? Okay, and then we argue out what they're going to say and whether, so they know where their line is at. Okay, and Cover Oregon is really at this point boiled down to Oracle versus Cover Oregon, the organization if it still exists, DSHS and OHA. Okay, Cover Oregon, they're talking about just this week talking about folding it into some other governmental organization instead of making it private business. Okay, and there's half a dozen lawsuits out there that I know of, big ones that I know of that are covering this thing, so versus is really an important thing. There's a kind of a blog I've written down there if you want to see that. So let's turn the tables. What would you do? You're given, this isn't exactly how it worked, but it's close enough. You're given $250 million to run a project, okay? You've got to deliver something in 2 years on a specific date, October 1st. In 5 years, you have to build so 3 years beyond that, you have to build a company that's profitable. What is it you start with? Where do you attack that first? What's the very first thing you would do?
What are you building?
What?
What are you building?
So what are you building?
What's the market? What are you doing?
Financial
Why? Financial what?
goals.
Financial goals. We're getting closer. And I'm going to accept that one because we're running out of time. Accountability, right? Where's this money going? And how's it getting divvied out, right? If I don't know where the money is going, because that's a lot of money. You can lose a lot of money and you'll see how much money was lost in just a few minutes, okay? However, the auditor, which is Data First Corporation, that's up there, Data First Corporation in their findings said that basically there was no single point of authority on the project, okay? Even though they had a variety of different steering committees, they were not effective on the project level. The whole project's end of this thing, there was no accountability. Money was spent, that $250 million was spent in 2 years, not in 5. Okay? Question?
I was just saying, no executive responsible.
No, they did. It was ineffective.
Oh.
They had an they had these figureheads, okay, but they did not do their job. It was totally ineffective at the project level. Okay. Other statements out of there was that there were competing groups between Cover Oregon, OHA, and DHS. They actually had competing priorities. Shocking. Yeah, I know. Nobody in here would ever have that because this is Washington. Okay. They did not have a common foundation for the project management. They were all using different measures and goals. And they had very poor communication. In fact, at times they actually were fighting with one another. Okay. For Oracle themselves, $250 million. Oracle itself had got $133 million. Okay. There's 3 names there. Okay, the reason there's 3 names is because every penny of that went through Dell. Every check, every PO was written to Dell, and then Dell set it out. Now, does anybody know what Dell does?
Third-party administration.
Theoretically,
They make PCs. They do have a contract administration function, generally for software and hardware around things like this Dell computer right here. Okay. Carolyn Larson did not want to, yes, I'm going to use her name because it's well documented inside the material. Carolyn Larson did not want to take the time to set up a direct contract with Oracle. So she used the Dell procurement contract, which means that some of these, I don't have them down here, some of these, like this little chunk right here of $35 million that was spent, had to be put on Well, that was more than 35, because that's 4 sets of contracts. There were 4 different purchases that were made on 9 different purchase orders, because of course there was a $9 million lid on what you could put through at a Dell PO, so you had to actually write, for a $35 million bit, you had to write 4 or 5 POs. No, it was all out in the open. We're not going to use the F word. That's a legal word, so we're going to stay away from that one. It was not fraud, okay? No, they were been in the system as much as they could, okay? But some of that money actually didn't even go directly to Oracle from here, because there was another company in between called Mythics. That is really their name. I can't make this up. Truth is stranger than fiction, okay? And Mythics actually subbed out some of the work to Oracle. Okay? So you can do the math in your head about where this money went, right? People said we had $250 million and how could we screw this up? And they started pushing money through. So, and again, the focus for me in the Oregonian was Oracle. So you're seeing 133, not the other 120 that was off to other companies. Okay? So this is the accountability that was missing from that organization. Okay? This is what you guys need to be able to be put in there. This is what audits will find, okay? Somebody said something about scope. Does anybody work for DSHS?
Used to.
Okay, so as part of Cover Oregon, because it was all this healthcare exchange stuff, they decided that they would also re-infrastructure DHS, which is their version of DSHS. So they actually took the DSHS modernization program and the Cover Oregon project, and they merged the two.
That's how the money came from the feds. So they essentially said, we'll give you all the money you need if you take the next step and rebuild your cash and food assistance along with your medical stuff.
Correct.
So the feds
Follow
that.
the money.
Yep. Does that make the project easier or harder? Impossible. It makes it impossible. Okay? So the scope ballooned and people made some very poor decisions on actually how to control scope. They actually made it bigger instead of smaller. Okay? Here is the list of the 5 documents that were used for scope. They were conflicting with one another. There were 5 completely separate scope documents for this project. There were 50, how many, have you guys ever dealt with Oracle? They bought 55 products from Oracle to build this system, okay? But somewhere between 25 and 10 and 25 named users apiece. They had 83 roles for 118.5 thousand hours of people, okay? They were the wrong people, because none of these guys had system integration experience. Okay, and we'll skip that slide. Okay, SOW review. I've mentioned an SOW review in the slides earlier. Why would you want to do an SOW review? Okay, here is a page. I'm going to, again, watching your time, because we're supposed to be done, I think, by now. This is 2 pages out of that contract, Oracle's contract. At the top, I want you to note that it's a time and materials contract. I don't have to explain that to some of you guys, okay? Time and materials contract. How much accountability is there in a time and materials contract? I see someone holding up a big 0, right? Fixed price contracts generally have, I pay you so much whenever you get done. This, I just pay you for what you work. It's really kind of cool, yeah. So you think, okay, well, I can still write a T&M contract and have accountability. Right? Except there's one word that's pervasive in this document that I think is relatively important, and it's that word right there. Okay? Yes. And I want you to note that nearly every single bullet has the word assist at the very beginning of it. Were they supposed to provide anything? Yeah, they were supposed to provide a few things. They were going to provide a quote. They were going to provide Oregon with an estimate. They were going to provide some guidance. I like this one. They're going to provide assistance. Okay? There's absolutely no accountability. This is why you do SOW reviews. Get somebody from the outside to look at this thing and scream that there is absolutely nothing right about this. This did not go by one person. This went by dozens of people, and nobody screamed. Nobody raised their hands. Okay? Why would you do a project health check or an audit, a project audit? Okay? Now, I'm going to give you a quiz. This is going to be really tough. So watch the screen carefully because I'm going to give you hopefully less than a half a second to take a look at this project health check report and tell me how the project's doing. Are you ready? Okay. How is the project doing? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out there's something wrong with this project, right? This company, Maximus, was hired to actually do project health checks. These dates, that's March 2013, that's December 2013. They only did it for that span. I've got reports that go back for 18 months. That it looks pretty much like that. And it's not a big deal. I mean, the only things that are red here are things like, well, the overall health, scope, schedule, inter-organization communication, project management, product, content, and testing. Those are the only things that are red. Okay? Yeah, one of them got better, I think, somewhere down here. Yeah, down here. Inter-organization communication. I would actually disagree with that one. I don't know how that ever got to be green. It was horrible. Okay? Worse than that. Quote from the first data. Multiple members of the Legislative Oversight Committee told us they were completely unaware of Maximus's QA role and had not received any of the QA reports. These reports were buried at the project level.
Like, how was communication? Ever?
What?
I was like, their communication started getting green.
Well, yeah, somehow. There's some parts of this I don't profess to know. It's not my report. Okay. Okay. So what you need to do tomorrow, what you really need to think about is print and read your corporate strategy, your organization strategy. Okay. If it isn't written, so you can't print it, go back and ask for it to get written. Okay. Otherwise, you don't know where you're going. Map all projects that you have to that strategy. Make sure that they actually are lined up and that they do things right. Focus on the top 3. You've heard me say that before. You can't do more. I mean, okay, so maybe you can do 4, okay, but you're not going to do 7. It's too distractive. You can't do it. People in the organization are too diffused. Management can't track it. I've proven that dozens of people have proven that dozens of times. Okay, and then very last on those 3 top initiatives, a laser-focused plan that you're continually on top of to make sure you get that thing done and get the right resources on that plan. Okay. So I apologize for taking so much extra time, but questions? If you want a copy of the presentation, give me a holler. I'll do that. Give me your card or whatever, and I'll send you a copy of the presentation. Okay. Questions?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.